Hello and welcome to the Business Spotlight interview series. I'm your host, Sonali Nigam. Today I'm joined by Sally Hawkesford, founder and director of SHC Digital. Hi, Sally. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi. Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you. Would you like to kick us off with a brief background as to who you are and what you do?
Yes, sure. So, as you mentioned, yeah, my name's Sally Hawkesford. I'm the founder and director of SHC Digital. So, we're a performance-based marketing agency. We're based in Birmingham in the UK. We've been going around 6 years now. There's a team of 8 of us here, and we work across D2C and B2B clients, basically managing all of their performance activity across digital spaces. So yeah, that's us in a nutshell, really.
Lovely. So, 6 years in the business, Sally. What do you attribute your growth to?
I think where a lot of our growth came from, which is good and bad, is referrals. So we often get referred a lot. So either our
Wow.
clients move on or our clients recommend us, which is absolutely amazing. Just the obviously the sort of so they're amazing because they're always very good clients. They come with a recommendation, etc. But obviously you can never predict when a referral is going to come. So it just kind of feels like now we've got to the point where we feel we've been referred to as many times as the possibly might have been. So we're kind of now looking to broaden out our kind of overarching growth strategy, and not just relying on referrals.
Right. So, I mean, that's something great for any business to get on referrals, which is interesting. So, being in this business, what would you say are the biggest learning as a business owner of the business running successfully?
Yeah, I think there's obviously there's several. We probably go on for hours around, but I think um team is one of my kind of number one things. We're a service-based business, so obviously we service clients, and the team is so important. I think one, obviously the team's chemistry with clients, but the team's chemistry with ourselves as well, and kind of working collaboratively. And I think really driving that from the top, because I can never expect somebody to do something that I wouldn't be prepared to do myself. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what I live by. And also making sure that the team have the direction and the clarity from me and the wider senior leadership team in our business about what is expected. Because obviously the team can't deliver something that they don't know that they're meant to deliver, or they don't know that's what the standard is. So we've kind of worked quite hard at that, because there's been frustrating times when obviously we're then kind of like, oh, we're not getting what we want from our team. But often it's not necessarily the team's fault. It's that we're not putting enough into it, that we're not giving that enough direction. We're not setting that standard. We're not giving a really clear kind of rhetoric about what the vision is, and what we think good looks like. And I think that's so important to cement from day one, because
Yeah.
if you can be really clear with that, then the team know exactly what to deliver. Obviously, then you've still got other pressures that come in around it. But if you can get that right, I think that does sort of really help. And then obviously team culture and things like that play a part in it as well. But it's just really important to get it right from day one. And then I think obviously there are lots of other different things, but I think things that we've found out from learning as we go, we've put in place, we have like a 30-day payment window, but we also have now in place that if those invoices go over X amount, then we will stop working until those invoices are cleared, because we just
Uh,
had a situation where a client owed us a lot of money and then they went under and stuff like that, and we just put ourselves in really vulnerable situations. So there's
uh,
just things like around logistics that we've also put in place that means that we can just kind of cover ourselves going forward.
Sally, you've mentioned an important aspect, which is team to any organization and any sort of organization. So, what qualities do you look for in employees when you hire them? And how do you foster a positive and a productive environment within your team?
Yeah, so we kind of look more at like kind of values that we kind of look at. So we kind of have really four key values that we look at. We obviously want someone to be curious. I think that's
Mm.
really important in this industry because it changes so quickly. So
Yeah.
obviously what was something yesterday isn't going to be the same today, and you need to be curious to find out that information and adopt it.
Hmm.
Obviously you need to be enthusiastic and have that kind of enthusiasm. And then a willingness to learn. I'm a real firm believer that um, if you're kind of enthusiastic and willing to learn, I can teach you everything else. But obviously, if you don't have that, then that's where the blocker sort of comes. So it's great
Yeah.
that you might have loads of experience or loads of knowledge around a particular topic, but if you're not kind of willing to continue to learn, and that's not just within your field, it's like about your clients' fields as well, and you kind of need to learn and understand that, be
Yeah.
able to do that. And then our third one is, so our kind of ethos is to deliver better. So it's always to deliver better for our clients, our team, and our community. So as I mentioned, we're based in Birmingham. So we're a real firm believer at trying to keep talent within our city as well, instead of losing it to, say, London or Manchester. So keep talent within our city and our local community and supporting local businesses within that community. And so we always want to deliver better. So our kind of fourth value that we look for in a team member is that they're dedicated to delivering better. So
Mhm.
dedicating to always looking, how can that client be, pushed forward? How can we deliver better on the last campaign? Or how can we deliver better on a new client that's coming in from what their current results are? Because by having that, it always keeps us to push forward and not stand still and not kind of rest on our laurels or something. Because, you do have certain clients that, oh, well, they're happy. So, that must be, that's good. And you're like, but they could be even happier, or we could still do this for them and they'd be even happier. So it's kind of like always pushing that forward, because that's the problem with an agency. Like, they're great until they're not, or until that client starts to become a little bit unhappy. And it's kind of like always getting to the point that we don't allow that to sort of happen, because we've always given them something else to kind of work from.
Interesting. So, talking about this, Sally, and because we want this interview to be full of learning, what challenges are you facing currently, and how do you plan to address them?
Yeah, so I think, like where I kind of alluded to at the front, probably our biggest challenge is like business development. And that's just because we're coming out of a 6-year period of not necessarily relying on, but being very lucky with referrals. And so
Wow.
now we're kind of having to push ourselves outside of that boundary now. And I think business development is such it's not necessarily a difficult area, but it's like a wild west sometimes, that like you then kind of like, we'll start focusing on one vertical, and obviously there's every platform under the sun that will try and then get you leads or something. And it's like making sure that those leads are of good quality. So,
Yeah.
we did start using a platform, and it does give you leads, and yet gives you a pipeline nice and quickly. But then the just leads aren't as good quality, or even if they are of good quality and you do actually win that client, the client can be like, they haven't all got their ducks in a row and stuff like that. So it kind of causes you a bit of pain. So I think business development is probably that area, but within it, it's holding your nerve and staying true and not chasing revenue. Because I think if you then chase revenue when you're working in business development, that someone's like, oh, okay, we'll take you on, and it's on quite a small retainer, and you know that like actually that's going to take way more time, but you're like,
Yeah.
no, good, because that's new business, that's more money in the pipeline. Great, let's do it. And you end up spending 3, 4, 5 times the amount of time on it that you said you were going to. And you could have actually taken on 3 clients instead of just that one. And sometimes you don't realize that until 6 months down the line, but it's again because you've chased revenue and you've said yes because you're like, yeah, we know it's a bit of a red flag, but we're going to do it because it's money, and it's money into the bottom line, and we're coming to the end of our financial year, and it'll top up our target and things like that. And now we have to be like, are they right? And sometimes we look at 3 things, not necessarily this first one, but someone told me this quite a few years ago, and they said always look at clients for 3 things, like, are they going to make you rich, are they going to make you famous, or are they going to make you happy? And if they don't do any of those 3 things, you should say no. And I think
Uh-huh.
sometimes we have to now look at clients a little bit more to then be like, okay, what are the red flags that they're showing? Are the red
Yeah.
flags that they're talking about financials? So like, are we
Mm-hmm.
going to get paid? Always kind of one. Are they also talking about like absolutely ridiculous results that we no way think are achievable? Is that a number 2? Because I think previously we've then been like, okay, yeah, their results, they're never going to get that, but we'll do it anyway. And it's like, well, we've not managed their expectations. So it's then always kind of like actually going back and really looking at clients and be like, do we want to work for them? Will they make us happy? Could we win an award off them? And will they be profitable? And if they're not those things, then we don't really want to be working with you. And that's a really hard thing to do. because we're an agency that's, yeah, like you said, 6 years old. So we've been through pandemics, cost of living crisis right in our infancy. So we're used to saying yes to a lot of things, and getting that back out of our system is hard. And so now we're kind of a bit more firmer to be like, do we want to work with those people? If it's a yes, if there are still a couple of red flags, are they deal breakers, yes or no? And can they be overlooked or can they be worked with? And then take it from there.
Rightly said that, Sally. And I was just stuck with the philosophy that you are sharing, because that's correct. You cannot work with all the clients. You really need to choose amongst them, which is the right one for you. So my next question is around this. So if you could do it all over again, what would you do next? You have a magic
Um,
wand to start everything again.
yeah. Yeah, I mean,
So
I say this because I don't know, it probably feels a little bit idealistic. So I started this business as a freelancer. So I literally left a job. So I was working in an agency, and I'd been in that agency for about 6 years. And just felt kind of like I loved it there, but it wasn't mine and it was never going to be mine. But then I went and worked for a startup. So I decided to leave them, went and work for a startup, but it was the most toxic environment I've ever worked in. And I was only there for about 6 months, and I was just like, oh, I've kind of got to get out. So I went freelance, and then things just grew and it became an agency. So, I never started this with, oh, I'm starting a business and this is my mission, this is my value, and this is what I want to do. And this is my vision for it all. I didn't have all of that. So I think now, 6 years on, retrospectively, it's easy to say, oh, I'd start it with all of those things in place.
yeah.
But then at the same time, I think in some ways it's been better adding them in as you go along, because you've learned so much already. Whereas you might put these really idealistic visions and missions in place, and then in reality, you're like, well, that's not true, or that's really difficult to actually deliver that. Um, so yeah, I think sometimes I'd like to have that it all packaged up and shiny and a nice bow on the top, but I'm also not sure whether that bow would be whipped off quite quickly and be like, I don't know what I was thinking here. This is like a pipe dream and that's not reality. So they're always kind of like, yeah, once, and if you could do something differently. But I suppose that would be it, that I'd have a bit more of my ducks in a row to start with, where it was a bit more kind of like survival of the fittest, I would say, to start with instead.
No, no, thank you so much for answering that, Sally. We've talked so much about your business. Now, I want to quickly touch about your personal life. So, how do you balance your personal life with the demands of running a business? I mean, I would want viewers to know we were chatting before the interview, and there was a time when you have to decide and choose between your baby and the business, because that was a scenario then, and both were essential to
Yeah.
you. So, yeah, I would want you to talk
Yeah.
about this now. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So obviously I started this business in 2019, and as I mentioned, as a freelancer. So it was about 6 months until I needed to take somebody else on, because I'd started this business as a freelancer, but I'd taken a contract role within quite a large retailer. So I was there 3 days a week. And then the other 2 days were, I suppose, my official freelance days. But this contract was only meant to last 3 months with them. And it ended up lasting a year and kept getting extended. So I built clients up around it and then got to a point where I needed to take somebody on. So then 2020 rolls round and we now need to take somebody else on. But then March 2020 happens and like 50% of our revenue falls out overnight. But I'm actually pregnant at this point, which is a very planned decision. Obviously, not necessarily planned when I thought I was going to be starting a business, because I didn't think I was going to be doing that. And I still wasn't sure I was doing that when I went freelance. I was just paying my mortgage type thing. So at this point, but I'm like, that's fine. I'm going to take somebody else on. We're going to continue to deliver all of this work, and I'll take some time out of the business, but I'll leave these two people to run. So this person we were looking to take on was quite senior. So then in March, when 50% of the revenue fell out, we just couldn't commit to that salary. And so it just kind of left me and a really junior assistant. And it was a decision then. I remember having a bit of a really dark time in that March, being like, do I have to make a decision of like my business or my baby? Which obviously, I'm obviously going to choose my baby. But at that time, they both felt like my babies. And I was just kind of like, I don't want to have to choose this, because I don't want to then resent having a baby and letting my business go. So there was a decision that I just had to kind of like beg, borrow, and steal. And we would do every single piece of work that we needed to do to get to August 2020 to be into position to hand over to somebody, because I couldn't really furlough myself because, it was me and one assistant. It needed to be something that then I could get somebody to come in and look after rather than then having to retire all the clients because I wouldn't be there. And we managed to do that. And luckily, like a friend of mine from a previous job was coming back off maternity leave and she was being made redundant. So she could come and work for me and she could do 3 days a week. So we weren't doing a really big commitment. We did it on like a freelance contract. So while I took a few months off. So yeah, that worked really well. And obviously, yeah, sort of helped. But yeah, I mean, you don't really have maternity leave as a business owner. You
That's
do,
right.
but like I still run payroll, invoicing, stuff like that. And then in 2023, I had another baby. So yeah,
Wow.
went through that whole system then, but I had a team of six then. So I had a much different maternity leave then, but I did still only take 6 months off. But that's more like when you talk about from my personality that, this isn't, this is my third child. And I think I heard something really important the other day from the owner of Airbnb on a different podcast, and he was saying like, as a business owner, it's always like it's your child, you're the parental, so
Yeah.
like you have that connection to it that nobody else ever does, and that's why it does it. It always feels like my third child. It has to go third in the priority rankings, obviously, but on certain days you can kind of feel like, oh God, which is the priority because one's screaming so loud.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was interesting that he was and said like you always have the parental kind of guardianship of it, and that's how you have that attachment that is quite different than anybody else, and you feel that with your own children. So yeah, it's very similar to that. But I feel like over the last year, sort of like my work-life balance is becoming much, much better. Like, yeah,
Wow.
obviously there are still times when I pick things up in the evening, but I rarely now have to pick things up at weekends unless they're planned because it's an event or, we're planning to work that weekend. Obviously, there's always some things that need to jump onto, but yeah, I feel like in a much better place with that. And I actually sort of have two other businesses outside of this business. I have like a property part as well. So sometimes that can be really like time consuming at certain points, like if people are moving out or something like that. So
Yeah.
that can take like a summer rental property. So we'll go into the peak season of that. So it's good sometimes when I have peaks and troughs in other businesses as well to manage.
Yeah. No, absolutely, Sally. And I think this is so inspirational, the way that you've talked about your personal life and balancing your work life. And I'm sure our audience have picked up so many things. So, is there any closing remark or a golden nugget that you would like to share with the audience before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think because obviously we talked about team being really important, and I often find that people find about recruitment being kind of, I'm recruiting that right team, and I think a lot of people recruit on skill set, which I absolutely still stand by. Like, absolutely, people need a certain skill set, but I
Yeah.
stand by kind of like, but if they're curious and enthusiastic and have that willingness to learn and they're dedicated to delivering better, I can kind of teach them everything else. But I also kind of say I work with like a lot of graduates across networking events that I run. I always say that. And I think this is true for a business owner as well. You don't need all the answers, but you do need to know the right questions. Because at a certain point, like where you go from being, say, a freelancer, I was the expert, I knew everything. But you have to then go to being a business owner and you have to work on the business, not in it. So you can't be, up to date on all of the latest changes on Google's algorithm, but my
Yeah.
team can. But I need to know the right questions to get the right answers out of my team.
Answers
And
from
if
them.
my team don't know, fine, but I've asked them that question so they can go off and ask that. And that's also been me being curious. Like I need to live to that value as well. And that
Yeah.
if I'm curious, I'll ask the right questions and then I'll get the right answers back. And it's like a full 360 because if I don't ask the question, they might not go and find the answer. But being by asking the question, they found the answer. We've now implemented that. And like we're all kind of working to deliver better at the same time. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's always about just always asking questions. And I think people make that sound like, oh, because you don't know the answer and that's wrong. And it's like, no, it's because you're being curious, that you're either asking a question because you don't know, or you're asking a question to again get the best out of somebody or get the best out of something else. And I think that's what's really important.
Sally, thank you so, so much for your time today. It was great
Oh,
speaking to you
welcome.
and knowing so much about your journey. And to everyone watching, I look forward to see you in my next episode. Thank you so much, Sally.
Thank you.